We're back here, whole 9 yards, on a Thursday afternoon. Drew Pien here with Brandon Krikorian, rocking the Brady jersey here for today. I mean, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about a big game coming up this Sunday night. Brandon, how's it going?
Good. Nothing to really talk about. Honestly, it's been a pretty easy week so far. Today's Thursday, by the way. So yeah, we have a game tonight. Is it a good game? No, but it's a game. Jaguars Bengals, but I think we're gonna focus more on Sunday's games than Thursday's games.
It's something to watch. I know there are people out there in the world that do enjoy like watching bad football.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not like I will watch it. I'm not going to be like ecstatic about this game, but something to watch.
Yeah, and you already know this game, like you said, like I'm probably going to watch it. Now, do I want to watch it? No. Even though the Bengals have played pretty well this year, they arguably could be 3-0. Also, could be 1-2 though. So, but I think this game is probably going to be one of those games where, like, you know, there's always one Thursday night game where it's two bad teams and it just turns out to be one of the better games of the year. But it's just because they're so bad that, like, it just is such a close game. Yeah. But I feel like that's probably the case for tonight, where there's going to be a couple picks, a couple bad penalties, a couple bad plays. You'll probably see like a 70-yard touchdown that comes out of nowhere or something. So it'll be exciting, though. I mean, I guess it's Lawrence's first time being on national TV, at least in the NFL, obviously. So we'll see how he plays. He hasn't played well so far, so I guess we'll see how he plays.
My prediction would be Bengals blowout, actually. I do agree with the thing where like the two bad teams play on a Thursday night and it's actually really close and a good game. It's just it's two bad teams. But I actually think the Jaguars are probably the second worst team in the NFL right now for me, or maybe third at best. And I actually think the Bengals aren't like horrible. They're one of those 6-11 teams that still competes every week. I don't think the Jaguars are that. I think this is. I mean, I'm like hard stuck with the take that this is Urban Meyer's one and done year at this point. I know I'm a little bit late on that. I know there's some people that were hard on that like the second he got hired, but anyways, week 4. If you want to hear anything about week 3. Check out the episode we just recorded like 4 days ago or whatever, 3 days ago. We record Sunday nights now, upload like Monday morning, maybe Sunday night. But we'll just get into our predictions. Maybe we'll talk about some other games if there's anything else to talk about. But I actually feel confident about this week. I know last week I went 5-0 or 0-5, sorry.
Yeah.
Puts me 7-8 on the year. Brandon's at 11-4 on the year. So, you know, not a great start for me, but
yeah.
I'll let you go first.
Okay.
And we actually, both of us have, out of our 5 predictions, we have 2 games that are the same. And same prediction,
okay.
By the way.
Okay. All right. So I guess it's all about the other 3 games then making up ground, at least for you. But my first game is Washington at Atlanta. And the line was plus 1.5 for Atlanta, which I was very surprised to see. As soon as I saw that, I had to go on it. I don't know how Washington's favored on the road. Now, the Falcons aren't good, but the way Washington has played so far this year, especially their defense, I can easily see Atlanta being at home, too. They do tend to play better at home. Putting up points, you know, I just feel like they can put up points against Washington, and that's something that you probably wouldn't have been able to talk about last year, but this year that's just the case so far. And even still, even if they're not really able to put up a ton of points, I don't trust Washington's offense either, so I don't really see how they're going to – you know, I know Atlanta's defense isn't great, but I think this game is going to be a game where Atlanta wins, and I just think plus 1.5, I think it's just a crazy line, especially being at home. So you're saying if Washington's at home, they're minus 4.5. I think that's too high anyways. So I think this is a steal, and I think the Falcons will cover plus 1.5.
You taking them to win then, or?
Yeah, I'm taking them to win as well. I think that this is a game they probably should win this game. I just think the way Washington's playing, and I know the Falcons didn't play great last week, but they still did win. And now they're at home, so I just think it favors them a little bit more.
My feedback on that is it's way too scary of a game for me to touch. I don't trust either of these teams really. At least I definitely don't trust the Falcon or the Washington offense, and I don't really trust the Falcons in general. So I didn't want to touch that game. My first game, Seahawks at Niners. I'm taking Seattle. They're 3-point underdogs on the road. So essentially they're saying this game is a coin flip. essentially. Obviously Niners are at home, but yeah, I'm gonna take Seattle. I think Seattle. I don't know if they're the better team. I think it's really close, but I think the Seahawks are slightly more desperate. I think I wanna go with my prediction of Russell Wilson MVP, and I think DK and Lockett are breakout receivers. They're just. I'm gonna go with the Seahawks. Honestly, it's a game that I'm not too confident in, but 2, 3, 4, and 5, I'm sold on. Like they're all steals. So this is my like one game where I'm like, meh, but
Yeah, I think this game's a little. I think the same that you said for my game. I think I kind of feel the same way with this one, and that I don't. It's not that I don't trust them. I just don't. I wouldn't know who to pick if I were to pick this game. So that's why I stayed away from it. Because I did look at it, and it's definitely somewhat enticing with Seattle +3. They've obviously lost 2 in a row. And again, you'd assume they'd play a better game, even though it's against the Niners. I don't know, like the division aspect of it, I think does matter. And again, if you lose this game, you're 1-3, and obviously in that division, the Rams are undefeated. Niners are 2-1. If they were to win, they'd be 3-1. Cardinals are undefeated, so you really can't lose another game, honestly, especially a division game, even though it's so early. So, I guess we'll see. But the Wilson MVP, he's gonna have to basically. He can really only lose like 2 more games the rest of the season, honestly.
yeah, I mean he's gonna have to win the division to win MVP.
Yeah.
And that to win the division, you probably have to go at least 13-4. So.
Yeah, most likely. So we'll see about that. Next pick for me, Lions at Bears. Again, another weird line, at least I think to myself. It's +3. I guess it's -3 in favor of Chicago. I'm going with Detroit. I think they're better than Chicago, and I know the Bears played. Well, you made a weird face, but I'll explain. I know the Bears played a terrible game last week. It was probably the worst offensive performance, or one of them in NFL history. I think I did see that stat, with all the sacks, the passing yards, the rushing yards, anything. The Lions, they're not great talent-wise. The Bears probably have more talent, but the Lions play way harder. I think Nagy is. I don't know if he'll get fired in the season. If they have a bad loss this week, he might get fired. But he's obviously going to be let go at the end of the season. But I think the Lions play way harder. We saw in the first 3 games, the Packers first half, the Niners second half, and then last week against the Ravens, basically the entire game. They played way better football than the Bears have, and I somewhat trust them more. And that +3, I'm not saying that they need to win the game. All they need to do is at least lose by 2 or less, and I think they have a really good shot at doing that. I think they play tough. I think they don't quit, and I think that works in the end. So, yeah, Lions +3.
I think that's a lot of recency bias. I don't think the Lions are the better team. I think as of recently they've played harder, but I'm not sold on that being like a permanent thing. I don't think Matt Nagy has like lost his voice to the point where the team's completely quit on him. I still think this team's gonna try, and I do think the Bears are the better team. They're not a good team, but I think the Bears are a team that can be a team that like similar to the Bengals, maybe not in the same trajectory. Maybe the Bears are trending down and the Bengals are trending up, but they're both in that kind of tier where it's like they're not good, but they're going to compete most weeks, if not every week. And the Lions, to me, listen, they're bad. They're awful. They suck.
They're not as bad as you think.
They're
honestly.
as bad as I think.
They're not.
They're not as good as you think, in my opinion.
I don't think they're good, but I don't think they're bad. I thought they were going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year, if not the worst team in the league. And even though they're 0-3, you cannot say that they're one of the 2 worst teams in the league. You can't say that. So for them to be able to compete like they have against good teams, I mean, they've played 3 really good teams in the Packers, Niners, and Ravens. And they've played really hard against all of them. I think you have to give that credit. And again, Nagy last week, you saw his offensive play calling. He didn't change one thing the entire game. And Myles Garrett said it after the game. They said after the first drive, they realized what they were doing, and they didn't adjust one time the rest of the game. The Bears I'm talking about. So if I don't know what's going on with the play calling, I don't know what's going on with him as a head coach, but I think the Bears are I think they're going to lose a lot of games, and I definitely could see them losing this game.
Well, one, I just kind of remember this, but even if they lose this week, the Bears, Matt Nagy's not going to get fired this week. I mean, maybe
unless they were to get blown out.
I still don't think. It's like week 4. I mean, there's no...
If they were to get blown out, I think he'd get fired. To lose at home to the Lions after getting completely embarrassed last week, I know it was against a really good team, but with the way everything's already happened anyways, I would not be surprised if they got blown out by like 20+, and it was just a complete blowout, that he would get fired.
And I don't agree. I've heard the Lions, like, they've competed every week. I've heard that before. I don't really agree with it just because, yeah, they had a lead.
How do you not agree with that?
Well, because they had a lead going into the half. I mean, against the Packers by 3, and then but here's the thing: is they still got blown out that game. They got blown out. I mean, I don't really.
Yeah, but that first half, I mean, they went down, scored. They took the lead in that first half. They were the ones who went down, scored a touchdown.
I don't care,
I think that matters for a team that's that bad. Because again, I agree, they are really bad. But for a team to show, because again, you look at the Jets, like they don't ever take a lead. They don't ever do anything positive. At least the Lions, who probably have the same talent as them, they just have a better quarterback because he's more experienced, I'd say. They actually take initiative and actually do stuff, and at least they fight to the end. I mean, they're putting up yards, they're putting up points. I think that matters.
Yeah, I don't buy it. I'm sorry.
I
mean, there's a reason I didn't bet on this game. But anyways, my second game is the Buccaneers of the Patriots. This is the game I'm the most confident in, I think. The Bucs are 7-point favorites in New England, and I'm going with Tampa Bay. So I'm not. I mean, as a Patriots fan, you would expect me to really root one way or the other. Am I Belichick/Patriots, or am I Brady and the Buccaneers? I'm really neither way. I was trying to think, like, is there a way this game could disappoint? I don't really think there is. Like, I don't. We're gonna see what's gonna happen this week. There's so many things to think about. You know, Brady walking on the field for the first time, the first drive, Brady passing the record, the yards record. There's so many things that are gonna happen this game. And I don't see a way this game disappoints. Really, I really don't, unless it's like a defensive warfare, which it's not going to be. I think it's going to be a blowout for the most part. I think Mac might show some flashes. I really think the Patriots are going to have the game plan of we need to throw the ball to win the game. Teams just haven't tried to run the ball against the Buccaneers this year, not only because their run defense is elite, if not maybe the best in the league, but because their pass defense is just, their secondary is just, it's the weakest part of their team, and it's not super close. I mean, the Cowboys week 1 pretty much aired it out the entire game. I expect the Patriots to try to air it out unless they want to just take the L. Honestly, if the Patriots don't just air it out and Mac Jones doesn't throw like 40 to 50 times, then honestly, I actually believe the Patriots tried to lose this game, or like tried to not put Mac out there to the point where he throws like 4 picks in a game again. Like, that's honestly my take. So I think the Patriots, for them to win, the Mac needs to throw the ball 50 times, and I think Belichick knows that. I think McDaniels know that.
Well, he threw it 51 times last week, so I don't think they're afraid of doing that again.
But I think they might be against in this specific game. I think they might be in this specific
I think if their offensive line holds up, I think they'll be.
But that's the problem. So the offensive line is the Patriots. So it was supposed to be probably their best, unit on the team in general, and it's been a weakness. Trent Brown going down did not help, but in general, the offensive line has been bad, and was supposed to be a top 5 unit maybe. It's not been good at all. Why is that? Essentially, Dante Scarnecchia. I don't know if you know him. I don't want to get too much into this. I'll get into this in my weekly thing, but Patriots offensive line coach retired a couple years ago. He retired for the first time in 2013, 2014. They win the Super Bowl. 2015, they lose to the Broncos because their offensive line was so bad. It's the same thing's happening again. The second year post Dante, their offensive line's horrible. But regardless, I don't think that matters. I think the Bucs just blow out this game. This is, to me, I'm just so dead set on Brady coming in here. He's going to get a standing ovation, probably the biggest in sports history as far as standing ovations are concerned. Post game, what happens? I don't know. I mean, I'm curious what's going to happen post game. I mean, typically in a blowout game, or really in most games, fans leave the stadium at the end of the fourth quarter with time still on the clock. 40 seconds, 30 seconds. I mean, this stadium's going to be full for a long time. I know somebody that's flying from like literally across the country just to watch this game. I think they're going to be disappointed, though, because the Patriots are going to get blown out. And I have no doubt in my mind. If the Patriots actually win this game, I know they're my Super Bowl pick, but this week in general is just separate from every single week. It's the weirdest game of all time in the NFL. If the Patriots actually win this game, I don't know what I would do, but I've already talked about this game too much. So,
yeah, I guess one thing on my side is that when I looked at this game, I said, which storyline do I want? Do I want the Brady going in there and blowing them out, or do I want the Patriots playing close or even winning the game, whatever? Because obviously it's -7, so I just couldn't really decide. But yeah, I think you would probably favor the Bucks at least beating them by more than 7 because they are the better team, obviously, and coming off a loss too. But moving on to my next game, I have Browns at Vikings, -2.5 in favor of the Browns, and that's what I'm taking. I looked at this as the Vikings in the first 3 games have given up more than 100 yards rushing in each game, and obviously that is the strongest suit of the Browns is the rushing attack. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen is that the Browns are just going to run the ball. They're probably going to get close to 200 yards, if maybe not even 200 yards, somewhere around that. That's what I think. I think Chubb's going to have a huge day. I think they're just going to beat him on the ground. Baker, again, that's where this is the best Browns offense is that when they could run the ball for 150 plus. Because then you have Baker and his rollouts and his play actions. You can throw it deep if you want. If they do bring someone else in that box, you can use that play action to go deep. Obviously, there's no Landry, but you got Odell back last week, so we'll see how he plays. So I think this is a perfect matchup for them. I don't think the Vikings are very good anyways. I know their offense was good last week, but that was against who they play last week? The Seahawks, and their defense is not the best, I would say, but they did carve them up, I will say, but I don't know how much I exactly trust this offense to be so efficient every single time out there. And again, the Browns have a much better defense than they faced last week. So I just think this matchup works perfectly for the Browns. And as long as they can run the ball, as long as that works, I think they're going to easily win this game.
I would say that same thing for the Browns every single week. To me, I struggle betting on the Browns ever because they typically just play down to the competition / play up. It's a scary bet for me, but we'll see how it works out. My third game is Raiders at Chargers. I'm taking the Chargers are favored by 3. I'm taking the Chargers. I don't think I really have to explain it. The Chargers last week just won a game that I thought they had no chance winning at all. The previous week, I bet on the Chiefs to win, and I honestly thought the Chiefs would come in and blow them out. And the Chargers won the game, which is just shocking. This team's looking like it could win the division. I don't think they're going to, but in a lot of divisions, this team might actually be a division-winning team. The offense is looking elite with Herbert emerging as a top 8 quarterback in the league. The defense is looking better, and this team doesn't look like it's a team that is. It was kind of just plagued by, I don't know, the ability to just not finish games and just kind of like the Lions is the team that they just find a way to lose games, and they find a way to just be weird down the stretch with Phillip Rivers as their quarterback. They just kind of had this weird thing around them. I don't feel it as much anymore with Herbert. It's kind of like an intangible, I guess, type of thing. And honestly, I'm not very high on the Raiders either. I mean, Derek Carr's played like an MVP, and is he going to play like an MVP the whole year? No. I still think he's better than people think he is. At least I thought that before these first 3 weeks. Yeah, but I'm going to go with the Chargers to win by more than 3.
Yeah, that's Monday night game, so I wasn't even really thinking about it, to be honest, but I actually kind of like their I don't know. I don't really know what I like in that one, but I guess we'll see. My next game, or next 2 games, like you said, it's both the same. We both have the same games, same picks. So I guess we'll kind of try and make it quick, I guess. But the first game, Chiefs at Eagles. This is such an easy pick in my mind. It's -7 for Kansas City, but I think they're just going to blow them out. The Eagles are terrible, as we saw on Monday night. For some reason, they don't run the ball, which I don't really understand why. And, obviously, if you go down early or whatever, you're trying to get back in the game by throwing. But, I think the first, 14 plays against Dallas was all pass. They didn't run the ball once. And it doesn't make sense because Miles Sanders, and I saw the stat today because LaShawn McCoy retired, but he's out of minimum 300 carries in Eagles history, he averages the most yards per rush at 4.9 yards. So I don't know why they don't run the ball with him. I think he's pretty underrated as a runner. I think he actually does get a lot of yards, but for some reason they don't use him like that. I don't know why. But again, Kansas City, after coming off 2 straight losses, the loss last week especially, they're playing a terrible team, a team that is going to win probably less than 4 games, to be honest, maybe 4 games. So this should just be a blowout. Mahomes should go in, absolutely torch them, and it just whatever game is next week for the Chiefs in my mind.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the Chiefs are going to torch the Eagles. It has nothing really to do with the Eagles. I just think the Chiefs coming off 2 losses. I think. I don't know. I don't think the Chiefs took their first loss as a wake up call, and I think it took a second loss, frankly, and also, I guess the defense is also really bad, and and the Chargers are also better than I thought, so that's why I was wrong about the Chargers game. But to me, the Chiefs are going to win this game, and I think it's by more than 20. I mean, the Eagles could be facing back-to-back 20-point losses, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. Maybe the Eagles cover like barely, but it's still going to be a blowout. It would be like a late touchdown that makes them cover, but I doubt it. Week 5.
Yeah, exactly. And for our last game, again, same game, same pick. Ravens at Broncos. The line is plus, 0.5. It's 0.5 minus for the Denver in favor of them. But I'm taking the Ravens. You're taking the Ravens as well. I think it's a crazy line, and I'm assuming you took this game because of the line, which is what I did. I was surprised when I saw it. And I know the Broncos are 3-0, and I know they're at home, and they do have a good defense, but I think the Ravens are a far superior team than them, even with their injuries and everything. I know they barely beat the Lions last week, but that was somewhat of a weird game. I think they're just going to – they're for sure going to cover this. I mean, there's just no way. I think they just win the game, clearly, but it's just a weird line. I just don't think Denver's that good. Their first 3 games were the Jets, the Giants, and the Jaguars. So even though I like the Broncos, you cannot base being 3-0 off those 3 teams. They're arguably the 3 worst teams in the league. So it's just a really weird line, and I think it's easy money if you pick the Ravens in this game.
Yeah, I would agree. No. The Broncos are – I'm not even high on the Broncos to begin with. And they're Jaguars, Giants, Jets. Those are the teams that I have as the 3 worst teams in the league right now.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, arguably the 3 worst teams in the league.
And I also think the Ravens in general are just a better team than the Broncos anyways.
Yeah.
I don't think Bridgewater is very good. I don't think this defense is – I like the defense, but I still don't buy it as like the best defense in the league. I think they're top 5, but closer to 5 than they are to number 1, which they're playing like right now. They've allowed, 8.5 points per game this season. Obviously, we just talked about the 3 worst teams in the league. So, yeah, I would agree. I think the Ravens win by a touchdown or more.
Yeah, and they also won't have Bradley Chubb in this game. Von Miller was Defensive Player of the Month, but, it's crazy that Myles Garrett didn't get that, but, I don't think it matters exactly. I don't think Von Miller's going to make that huge of a difference, especially against this offense. It's just all running. I just saw the stat. They have 42 straight games of 100 yards rushing, so they're looking to make it 43, which would tie the record. I think it's almost automatic that they're going to rush for 100-plus yards. And I know Lamar missed practice again today, but I think they said it was precautionary, so he should be fine for that game.
Yeah. So those are our 5 games for Week 4. I feel much more I think I said I felt confident about last week too.
Yeah, I think you did.
I feel confident about this week. Other than Seahawks at Niners, I honestly think I'm going 4-1 this week. If I'm right about Seahawks at Niners and I'm wrong about one of games 2 through 5, I don't see myself being wrong on more than 2 games this week. I don't. That's obviously cocky, and that's why I'm picking these games, but I like my slate of games this week.
I think as long as I can go 3-2, I'll be happy. I don't love my games, but I do like them, and I just hope I can go 3-2 and I'll be happy. So
the scary thing for me about this weekend is that we have 2 games that are the exact same, and really going forward, right now I'm not worried about it. I'm only I'm technically 4 games back on you, which is a lot, but it's also not a lot in a 17-week season, a 17-week year. But if we get to week 14 and I'm still behind by a solid amount, then I'll have to start picking games that are different from you just for the sake of doing that. So
yeah, there's 85 games total that we're gonna pick. That's what 17 times 5 is. So you have there's still a lot of time.
18 times. I think there's 18 weeks in the NFL now.
I guess technically 18. Yeah. So there's 90 games that we could pick. So there's still 75 more games left to choose.
Yeah. So right now I'm not worried about picking the same games as you. Going forward, maybe. But
probably when it gets to week 13, 14. Probably 14 is probably the week, depending on what the record looks like at that point.
Yeah. I'm just looking at our note doc and like my predictions right now, and they're looking bad.
Should we do a quick recap, or should we wait a couple more weeks?
We should wait a couple more weeks, but I'll just say Offensive Player of the Year, Christian McCaffrey. Coach of the Year, Bill Belichick.
Yeah, those aren't going to happen. I think my picks look great, actually.
They do look pretty good.
I think the only question is my MVP Offensive Player of the Year, only because you just don't know right now. But I think that's still a pretty good shot at winning at that one.
Yeah. I mean, your Super Bowl to me is still sketch, but,
I mean, you're just Patriots Seahawks, so I think I'm in a better shape.
You are in better shape than I am, but, the Browns are not making the Super Bowl, so. Anyway.
Well, I know for sure the Patriots aren't. So
I mean, we don't know about that.
I guess we'll cancel that one.
We don't know about that for sure yet.
Well, I think I have a better shot with my pick. But
all right.
We'll move on from football, unless there was anything else we wanted to talk about, but I don't think there was. And we're going to move to baseball because there's only 4 games left in the regular season and a couple of the wild card spots. So in the NL, the wild card spots are set. There's 3 teams for 2 spots, but it's rather the Dodgers or the Giants in the first wild card spots, depending on who doesn't win the division, and then it's the Cardinals locked in as the number 2. And then in the American League, it is coming down to the end of the games. It's the Yankees are in first place right now. They're +1 against the Red Sox, who hold that second wild card spot. But Seattle is half a game out of the Red Sox, and Toronto is 1 game outside the Red Sox. So the Yankees play the Blue Jays tonight. That's the end of their 3-game series. They split the first 2 games, so this will be a pretty big game because if the Yankees win, then they're pretty much set in the wild card spot. They do play the Rays for 3 games at the end of the season, while Toronto, they play the Orioles, so that's obviously a lot easier of a team. The Red Sox, they play the Orioles again tonight. They split the first 2, so obviously that's like a must-win game right there. Then they play the Nationals, who I know that's your team, and they suck, so that should be at least 2 out of 3 there, you would think. And then the Seattle Mariners, they play 3 games against the Angels, who obviously aren't very good either. So I guess out of those 4 teams, and I just told you who they play left, and what their how many games back or up they were, who do you think is going to finish in those first 2 wild card spots?
So Yankees, Red Sox, Seattle, and Toronto?
Yes, that's the order that they are right now.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have the Yankees as the first one.
Okay.
I mean, okay, so who's the best team out of the last 3, which is Boston, Seattle, and Toronto? I mean, I don't know who you would go with. I would probably go with Toronto.
That's probably what I would go with as well.
I definitely wouldn't. Okay, I'm biased, but I wouldn't go with the Red Sox. And, yeah, I don't think I'd go with Seattle. So I would go with the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, would I have Toronto making the second wild card spot?
They need a win tonight because they play the Orioles the next 3 games. And, again, you just assume that's at least 2 out of 3. So a win tonight is just huge. And it's against the Yankees as well. So,
yeah, I'll go with Toronto. I'll go New York and Toronto as my 2 wildcard teams.
Yeah, I think the Yankees make it. And again, they play the Rays. It would be interesting to see what the Rays do because they already clinched home field for the playoffs, so they're obviously just set, for the rest of the playoffs. So they could just sit their guys the last 3 games of the season. But you're also playing the Yankees, and you do have a chance to possibly knock them out of the wild card, or at least put them down to the second wild card. So I wonder how many of their starters are going to play, if they actually are trying to win these games or not. Maybe they try to win the last game if it matters. I'll be curious to see that. But I still think they'll make it. The Yankees. I think they'll most likely get that first wild card spot. But for that second wild card spot, I don't think the Red Sox are that good of a team. They just started off so hot, but like ever since basically the All-Star break, maybe even a little bit before that, they've been pretty bad, honestly. Seattle has been amazing lately. I mean, they're 9-1 in their last 10 games. And again, they play the Angels the last 3 games, so that's pretty favorable for them. So I think it's between them and Toronto, and honestly, I think I may go with the Mariners. they're not as good as Toronto. They may not even be as good as the Red Sox, but just the way they're playing, if you look at like Instagram and Twitter and everything, everyone seems to be behind the Mariners out of all the teams. So I'm going to pick the Mariners. If it's not them, it will be the Blue Jays, though. But I do think it will be the Mariners. And, again, that'll be their first postseason appearance in 20 years. So,
yeah, what's the longest postseason drought in all four major sports? Is it?
I think
Mariners?
it's that. I think 20 years.
And
I could look it up, but I think it is that.
And so if the Mariners does making the wild card count as making the playoffs? It does, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if they make it, then it would become the Kings. Then it's what 2003, I think, is for the Kings. For football, I don't even know who it is now at this point.
Yeah, football.
Maybe
I wouldn't even know.
Yeah, football is just there's no way
they maybe wouldn't be them. I don't know. Yeah, that's actually like a pretty good question because obviously it would always been like the Browns or whatever, but
well, it was like the Bills too, I believe, for a while until 20 whatever.
Yeah, the Bills was 25 years, but that was before this year, obviously. Or they even made it a couple years ago. I guess that was a win. Their first win was in 25 years, but well, I guess the longest win drought, like not just making the playoffs, the longest win is the Bengals. That was 1991, or that was 1990, the last time they won a playoff game.
Interesting.
But that was just last time they won. Obviously, not made it because obviously they made like 6 straight or whatever it was. But then the Lions for win, that was 1991. Yeah. So I guess win droughts in the NFL, it's the Bengals 30 years. Lions 29, Dolphins 20, Raiders 18, and Washington 15 for winning in the playoffs.
Okay. And then for hockey, it's the Sabres who haven't made the playoffs since 2011.
And actually, the longest playoff drought in the NFL is the New York Jets.
So what's that, 2012, 2013?
2010.
2010.
AFC Championship game.
Oh, that was from 2010? Really? So when was their first one, 2008? Yeah, I think so.
Well, 2009. They made it
back to back. Yeah.
Because it was the Browns and the Bucks, at least one of those two teams. I would assume the Browns. And then obviously when they made the playoffs last year, it turned to the Jets. So, and let's check NBA. NBA should be the Kings. Yeah, the Kings. 14 years since they made the playoffs, and I guess the Timberwolves made it a couple years ago, but obviously it was them before. In baseball, it is the Mariners 2001. And NHL, you said it was the Sabres.
So that's interesting. I mean, okay, so out of the wild card teams in the AL, we'll just say all four. I mean, do you have the Yankees as the best, or do you have Toronto as the best, or?
I have the Yankees as the best, and in terms of talent, I'd probably put Toronto second. But I think the Yankees would be the best. Now, when they actually get, let's assume that it's the Yankees are in, and then you had the Blue Jays, I had the Mariners. Who's winning that game? I think it'd be close. I think if it was the Mariners, I think the Yankees would for sure win. I think they're just better. But I think the Blue Jays would be very close because their starting pitcher is most likely going to win AL Cy Young. Obviously, the Yankees would have Garrett Cole in that game, but Garrett Cole pitched yesterday against the Blue Jays, and he let up 5 runs in 6 innings. So I don't know. It's not an easy lineup. I mean, that lineup has at least 6 or 7 players who, are above average MLB players and obviously MVP type level players as well.
Do you buy any of these teams as having legit shots to get to the World Series?
Well, yeah. So that's the question. So the Rays are going to play the winner of the wild card, and it's a really tough series. I mean, the Yankees have never had success against them, so that's going to be really tough. They're going to have rest as well. That obviously plays in the favor of the Rays. They could rest the last 3 games here and then a couple more days when the wild card happens. So it's all in the favor of the Rays, and I think it would be really tough to beat them. But I think if there was a team to do it, it'd probably be the Yankees. I don't know if the Blue Jays could beat the Rays in a 5-game series. I think the Yankees could, and that depends very heavily on their pitching and obviously their offense that they've been doing the last couple weeks that needs to continue into the playoffs, which has always been a question with them. So,
Yeah. So you don't buy the Red Sox, Mariners, or Blue Jays though as having legit shots.
No. I think if any of them were to win the wild card, I think they'd lose pretty easily.
Okay.
The Blue Jays, I think, would have the best chance, but I think they'd still lose. But I mean, it definitely does suck having to play the Rays, just because it's gonna be the White Sox and the Astros and the other one, and I think those two teams are a little more. I think they're easier to beat than the Rays are, in my opinion.
Sure.
And it was weird because I think before the season started, when we made our predictions for the standings, I think we both had the Rays finishing second in the division. But I don't think we had them making the playoffs though, or maybe they were a wild card team.
We were low on the Rays.
Yeah, and now they're at 98 wins right now, and they could finish with 100. So
we at some point we will look back on our predictions.
Yeah, well, we may do that maybe right before the playoffs start, or maybe at some point in the playoffs or for the World Series, because I think we did pick our World Series as well.
We did pick the award winners as well.
Yeah, and that I don't know if any of them are right.
I think AL Rookie of the Year.
Oh yeah, Randy is most likely going to win it. But I know my AL Cy Young, NL Cy Young, I picked DeGrom. He obviously would have won it, but he got injured. I picked Trout. I picked Soto. I mean, that was a pretty good pick. It's just that he's on a terrible team. I think if they had 90+ wins, I think it easily could be him. But it's most likely going to be Bryce Harper.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Harper. Yeah. I don't think our award predictions were awful, but I mean, maybe they were not great. I mean, because we made the safest pick. I made really safe. I pretty much picked the favorite or second favorite in most categories. I'm at least trying to think about it in the back of my head.
I know you picked Cole, you picked Trout.
I picked Soto.
Okay, you picked Soto.
But Soto was still Soto was a favorite to win that award.
Soto was one of the favorites. And again, he's still going to finish top 5. And again, if he was on a better team, I think he would be. He'd have a really good shot at winning it because of his numbers are just insane this year. But, yeah. So we'll do that at some point. But I guess our picks for the wild card are Yankees, Blue Jays for Drew, and then Yankees, Mariners for me. And again, there's only 3 games left. I guess 4 games for some teams, but really, I guess three games mostly.
Looking in the NL, I mean, it's not a race at this point, but I mean, do you buy either wild card teams as having? I mean, it's kind of an easy question, but do you buy either of the wild card teams as having a legit shot to make the World Series?
Well, of course the Dodgers. Yeah. I mean, the Cardinals are playing so amazing. I mean, their 17-game win streak came to an end yesterday, but just looking at the run differential, for the Dodgers, it's plus 250. For the Cardinals, it's plus 34. So, I mean, that should basically just tell you the whole story right there. It's that the Dodgers are just, I mean, I think they are the best team in the MLB, just that the Giants have been playing so amazing, which, again, another pick that neither of us even had them coming close to the playoffs, and they're ready at 104 wins right now. But I think the Dodgers, I think they will win the wild card game. They're going to have to play, again, assuming they don't win the division, which I don't think they will. Doesn't seem like it right now. They're going to have to play the Giants. So that's going to be a great series. That's going to be a series where you wish it was 7 games because it'd be more memorable if it was a 7-game series.
If I made you pick your World Series right now, who would you have?
I think I'd have the Dodgers in the NL.
And let's assume that they don't win the division.
Yeah.
Okay, so assuming even if they don't win the division, you're still picking the Dodgers.
I'm still picking them. The Giants lost Brandon Belt to a broken thumb. I think that matters. And I think the Dodgers are the better team. In the AL, it's so tough because, I want to say the Rays, but I don't think the Astros have the pitching to do it, and the White Sox seem like they would be the team to do it, but I don't know. They're I don't know if it's just because their division was so bad this year or whatever, but they just didn't seem like the team. They don't seem like the best team. So I guess the Rays, but I honestly really don't even feel too confident in that.
There's not a team that I'm dying to pick in the AL. I know it sounds weird, but NL I would agree on Dodgers. Even if they don't win the division, if this team doesn't make the World Series, I don't know. I would not know what to say. That team is just way too stacked for, it's just way too stacked. AL, Yeah, I would have thought you would have went with the White Sox because I feel like that was a team that you've liked the whole year.
I have, and I mean the additions they got at the deadline were insane. But for some, I don't know if it's just because of the division they play in. Like it's just such a boring division. They could just win. And, obviously they won the division in the first month of the season, but maybe that's why. Maybe I'm down on them because of that going into the playoffs. They haven't been playing great recently. Maybe that's also why. But I if there were a team to beat the Rays, I think it'd be them. I know the Astros have the experience, and again, we saw it last year. They went down 3-0 and turned that series into a 7-game series. But I think the White Sox are better than the Astros, and I think they'd put up a really good shot against the Rays. But I don't know. Yeah, I think it'd be a close series.
I mean, I'll go with Astros versus Dodgers in the World Series.
Rematch?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I picked the Rays too, it would have been a rematch.
Yeah. That would back to, I don't know when the last time back-to-back years of rematches was in baseball.
I could not tell you.
It'd probably have to be like sometime in the I'd probably say like the 60s or something, but I wouldn't know.
Honestly, though, as far as who I'm rooting for, obviously my team, the Nationals, are not in the conversation. The Yankees are in the conversation, so obviously you'll be rooting for the Yankees. If I wanted to be a good friend, I would root for the Yankees as well. I'll root for the Yankees. Really what I'm rooting for is the Dodgers find a way to just like choke the World Series. Like I honestly hope they make the World Series. I either want them to lose in the wild card or make the World Series and like lose in the worst way possible. So like choke a 3-0 lead. We're talking like they get Game 7. They have like a 7-2 lead in Game 7, and they somehow choke it. Like something insane. That's honestly because I don't really. I'm not a big Dodgers fan.
Yeah, and I mean even with them having Turner and Scherzer.
Listen, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about. I didn't know how to feel about the trade when it first happened. I wonder how they feel. I mean, obviously they're trying to win. I just, would it like for most people on that team, like would a World Series wouldn't even feel that great. I mean, obviously it has to feel great, but it would be closer to like the Warriors winning the finals than it would be to like the Mavericks in 2011, obviously.
The only thing I'll say is that if there was no Giants this year, I think it'd not mean less, but it would. I think we view it as being less, but like I mean, there's a team that has more wins than them in their own division. So I think if this was last year and they got Scherzer and Turner, I think it'd be different. But like this year again, they've been the second team in that division the entire year.
You're not wrong, but the team just on paper is way more talented
no,
than
of
any
course.
team in the league. The only adversity they're going to face is going to be assuming they lose the division, the wild card game. But assuming they win the wild card game, then they're in the same boat, which is like they're just though they don't have the most wins in the league or even in their own division. I mean, they're still just way more talented than any team. They have players on the bench that would be like literally the best player on a team on the Pirates and like some of those Oriole teams and all those teams.
It's you are right. If they do win the wild card, they are just in the same position that they would have been anyways because they would have had the most wins no matter what. They would just be on the road for the first 2 games. And you would have to use. I'm assuming they'd use Scherzer in the wild card game, but maybe Buehler, I guess. But whatever. You still have Buehler, Kershaw, Urias, who has the most wins in the National League. Like, it is crazy how good they are.
So you're picking the Dodgers to win the World Series as well, or are we gonna wait for that? I mean, I guess it wouldn't really. You'd still pick them. You would still pick the World Series anyways, but I would pick the Dodgers.
It's hard not to pick them just for how good the team is, but the only thing is like I don't know how confident I am. It's weird. I don't know how confident I am in the Rays. Like if they were the team, like whatever team comes out of the AL, I just don't know which team has the best chance to beat them. That's the only problem. I think the Rays, but again, if they're going to do what they did last year and just listen to what the analytics tell them, then they're going to lose because that's not how you win. And we obviously saw that last year. So
the Rays have always been a regular season team. I don't know.
Yeah.
In other sports, I don't know what you would equate them to, but I mean,
they were almost like the Bucks before they won.
Yeah, essentially.
Where they're just obviously they have a guy like Giannis, and the Rays don't really have a guy like that, but they win no matter what, and they put up amazing numbers, and then when it gets to the playoffs, it just falls apart. And obviously last year it changed with the Bucks, but I don't know. I think that's probably the best comparison.
they've always been not always, but recently, past 5+ years, they've always been an analytics-based team. And you kind of have to be when you don't have the money or the pull that a Yankees or a Dodgers or, even I guess maybe a Red Sox, but those type of teams have. You kind of have to be like that. It falls apart in the postseason. It really does.
Yeah.
So I don't want to pick the Rays because I think that goes against what I think. I don't really believe in like an analytics forward team winning the World Series, and I don't think the Rays have like the talent to kind of counteract that. If that's I don't know if I'm saying that in the right way, but yeah, I'll go with the Dodgers to win the World Series. I'll have them beating the Astros. I'll have it going 5 games. We'll see what happens. The interesting part about our predictions right now, though, is that we could have so we're both picking the Dodgers pretty much, but Dodgers could literally lose in the wild card, which is just interesting. If they lost in the wild card, that would make this playoffs super interesting.
Yeah, and again, the only problem with that wild card game is that the Cardinals were so hot, and like it's almost impossible. It's like they got too hot too early, and again, they needed it to get into the playoffs, but it's like you're not gonna. You just can't play that well for another like week as well. And to beat that team, you have to play perfect. And that's going to be really hard. So I think they almost got too hot too early, even though they needed it. And I think the Dodgers are just going to win that game. So, yeah. And again, they're 2 games out of the division. So with only 3 games left, they're most likely locked into that wild card spot. So they're probably going to rest, guys for that game anyways.
Yeah, but that's the MLB. We'll talk about it more as, this is like October. Well, almost.
Tomorrow's October.
So we're getting into it, as well as NFL always being there during this time of year. NBA, small news, super small news in the grand scheme of things. Micheal Porter Jr., MPJ, signed a 5-year, $207 million contract extension with the Nuggets. Do you have any first reactions?
Yeah. Well, first it's 172.
Oh, okay, sorry. Up to 207 maybe?
Up to 207 if he makes an All-NBA team, which I don't think he ever will, to be honest. At least in the length of this contract, maybe, but I don't think he will. But even still, it's a lot of money for someone who I like. But we've had conversations about Micheal Porter Jr. before, and I know from 3 the last 2 years he's been above 40% both times, maybe even above 42%. So we know he's a great shooter. We know he's a great scorer. The defense has never been there. It got a little bit better last year, but still it's never going to be anywhere close to where you want it. But I just don't know on this team when Murray comes back. He's the 3rd guy on this team, right? So you're paying the 3rd guy on your team again who has the potential to probably be like a really solid number 2, depending on who that number 1 guy is. To pay him that much, I think it's a lot. I don't really know. I don't know if they needed to do it or not, but I just think that's a lot of money for someone who is going to get you like 20 points. Again, with Murray being out for most of the season, he's probably going to get you like 22, 24 points per game with Jokic, but I think it's a lot of money for a guy who is just like a scorer, and he's an elite scorer if he can live up to his potential, but he has to live up to that potential first, and then when Murray comes back, he's number 3 there, he's not number 2. So I think it's a lot of money for someone like him.
I agree it's a lot of money. I think you're betting on his defensive ability getting just better in general. I'm not too worried about him offensively. Really the only questions offensively, he's an elite shooter. He's just an elite offensive player in general. It would be, if we give him significantly more volume, is he going to maintain, his efficiency? We'll see. I think so. I think he's an elite offensive player. And how good is he offensively down the stretch? We're not exactly too sure on. I don't know if he necessarily has to be the closer on a Denver team during this contract. I don't think he would have to be. But he'll still be taking shots down the stretch, and he's going to be a guy that, if you're paying $172 million over 5 years, has to be in the game. In any important game, he has to be in the game the last 12 minutes. He has to be in the game the whole 4th quarter, pretty much. And with that defense right now, I don't know that you can have him in all 12 minutes. And if you're paying somebody $172 million, they pretty much have to be in all 12 minutes of the game. I like the contract more than I have like other contracts on this team. I'm not a Jamal Murray person. I don't know what you would do with Jamal Murray. I'd say you're in a tough spot. Yeah, but I do think Porter Jr. will make an All-NBA team in the next 6 years. I do buy that. I know you don't, but I do. It's really going to come down to, can he maintain this efficiency with more volume, and can he get better defensively? Really, can he get better defensively? I don't know. I mean, he has the stature and the talent to, I think. He just hasn't put it together for whatever reason. Maybe injuries are still a concern too about Micheal Porter Jr. I don't think they're as big of a concern as maybe people thought coming out of the draft, but they're still there.
Yeah, and I think he can make an All-NBA team if Murray's not there, which is the question. Like, when Murray's there, even if Porter's the better player, Murray's always going to be the number 2 there, which is going to be a problem at some point. You're going to get to a point where you have to trade one of them, and you'd obviously rather trade Murray, who's older and most likely not as good as Porter can be. So I think if they trade Murray or whatever they do with Murray, and Porter is solidified as that number 2 guy, like the guy, like at the end of the game, it's him and Jokic, and you're pretty confident with both of them having the ball, then I think he definitely could. But at this point, I mean, again, last year he only attempted 13.5 field goals per game. You know, I'm curious to see what that looks like without Murray, and then when Murray comes back, what that falls down to. You know, is it going to go all the way up to 17, 18? Without Murray, maybe even 19, and then when Murray comes back, does that go down to 14, 15? Like I said, I'll be curious to see what that is. Again, the 3-point shooting, 42% technically rookie year, and then 44.5% last year. So that's not a problem at all. Him scoring the ball is not a problem, but I think there's going to be at some point they're going to come to a crossroads, the Nuggets, where it's Murray and Jokic, or is it Porter and Jokic? And I think the latter would be the answer. But that's something that
I would agree. But that when you get to that answer, it's like, what do you do with Murray then?
Like what does trade value be, and what player are you getting back? I mean, that wouldn't compete for Porter's spot at number 2 as well. So.
What is Murray's? I mean, okay, this is a really tough question to answer. There really is no answer right now. But what is Murray's trade value right now? To me, I mean, if I'm a team, I don't want to trade for Murray. I don't view Murray as really that big of an asset because I just don't.
Yeah, I think Murray he's a solid point guard. He's more of a shooting guard more than a point guard, but it's obviously he's going to play the 1. He's a guy who can score for you, and at times looks way better than you think he is. As we saw in the playoffs in the bubble, last year or whatever. And he's not that guy all the time. If he could be, he'd be amazing, but he's just not. So I think he's a solid player who's going to score points, can shoot, can handle the ball. But is he ever going to be like a championship type player? Probably not. If he were to be on a championship type team, it'd be as your number 3, and he'd just be your point guard. But
is he a number 3 on a team? That's my question. Is Murray even a number 3 right now?
Well, I think it depends on the 2 players above him. I think Jokic is a really weird guy to play with because he basically is a point guard. And we talked about this when we did we have a video coming out about the top 15 players, and we talked about Jokic there. But, it's weird playing with Jokic because he's basically just a point guard. So, if you were to play with an AD and a LeBron, I mean, for sure it could be that number 3 point guard. But, he's playing with 2 guys. One guy who's 23 and has only played 2 years, basically really only 1 year, to be honest. And then Jokic, who's an MVP, but he's a point guard, and he's not a scorer. He's more of just a guy who can score if he wants, but he'll pass, he'll rebound, he can play some defense, obviously. So I think it's just a weird team that he's on. So, if that's somewhat answer the question, then yeah.
Yeah, my doubt is with Murray making $29 million this year, 31, 33, 36. That's a lot of money to pay a number 3, and I think there's no matter who your number 1 is, I don't think he can be your number 2. And I think maybe this contract to Porter Jr. is the Nuggets agreeing with that. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But I really do wonder, when would you get to the point when the Nuggets would be willing to trade Murray? Because right now I don't think they're dying. They're not looking to trade him per se. When would you get to that point? And then when you get to that point, other teams will have already reached the point where they're yeah, we don't really like Murray as anything more than a number 3 or maybe a number 3, but probably a number 4, and we're not paying a number 4 31, 33, and then $36 million. So
wait, so when does this contract end?
So right now he's in the second year of his 5-year, $158 million deal. So this year he makes 29. The next year he makes 31, then 33, then 36. So he's an unrestricted free agent in 2025.
Okay, so this year's basically a wash because of the torn ACL. So when he comes back, it's going to be playoff time basically. So I would honestly say at some point next season or at the end of next season when this team still hasn't really advanced in the playoffs, most likely. I mean, maybe, but most likely they probably haven't got to a finals. There's been some playoff struggles, whether it's him or Jokic or Porter or whatever. You're going to come to a point where it's like, all right, we have to shake this team up somewhat, get some new faces in here, get someone else instead of Murray. Again, most likely, but you're not going to trade Jokic or Porter. I think that's when it would come. So after next season is when I'd say going into, I guess, what would be his fourth year of that contract. So you have 2 years left. I mean, that's still enough value to get someone back there, whether it's picks or in a player or player, and then less picks, whatever it would be. I think that's probably the most likely situation.
Yeah, I just feel bad for the Nuggets because they have a lot of talent, obviously with Jokic, Porter, Murray, others. But you're just in a tough spot because, you have a 1 for sure, but he's like a lower echelon number 1. Like, he's not a top 5 player in the NBA.
Yeah.
We talked about it. I mean, maybe that's a spoiler, but he's not a top 5 player in the NBA me and Brandon both agree on that, and I think many would agree with that. So he's, in terms of championship caliber ones, he's on the lower tier of that. And then you have a guy who's in the lower tier of 2s and probably not even on that tier. He's probably in the higher tier of 3s, if that. I mean, I don't know where you would have that, like, tiers of, number 1, number 2, number 3s, but Murray and Porter are both not favorable on that tier list right now. I think Porter has potential to get higher. I think Murray has probably already reached his ceiling in terms of, like, how good he can be, as in terms of that tier list of, I don't think he's going to be number 2. So if I was a GM right now, I mean, I don't know if you would trade Murray while he's got a torn ACL, but I mean, you're in a really bad.
Well, they're not going to trade him now, obviously, but I think a team that would fit actually pretty well, at least in my mind, would be Dallas. I think Dallas could use Jamal Murray. Now, what would they give up? Again, at this point, you're not going to trade him, but, like, let's say in my scenario, at the end of next year, again, where Dallas is I mean, the problem with the Nuggets is that they're almost like the Jazz, where they just don't have like I know Jokic is MVP and everything, but he's not like a superstar, a guy who can just carry you. That's kind of the same problem with the Jazz with Micheal. So I think they're going to be always a top seed in the West, but they're never going to be able to beat the teams like a Luka when he gets help. That team's going to be unstoppable. Whatever next team comes along, or in the West, whatever team Zion ends up on, or if it's still the Pelicans, whatever, that's going to be their problem. So I think Dallas would honestly be a great fit because they're always going to need a point guard who can shoot. And obviously Murray can do that because Luka's going to have the ball all the time. So I think that would actually be a really good fit. But that would most likely happen in a year or even 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm already nearing the point with Murray where I'm saying, like, if I was looking to trade for a guy to make my team from contender, like, 5-4 seed or whatever, to, like, legit contender, I don't even know if Murray's good enough to push my team above the hump. So, AKA, he doesn't have much trade value. So, like, if you're the Nuggets, I don't know what you would do. Would you – listen, you're not going to trade him right now, but down the line, you may have to just trade him for nothing because his contract is large.
Well, the one thing I'll say is that he's always going to have value, and that contract may look large right now, but when the TV contract's up, I think, at the end of this season, so contracts are going to be huge. So $31 million is not going to look like that much.
But it still may be enough to the point where it's like it kind of – for a lot of teams, it'll be the thing where, like, if you bring him in, you can't bring another max guy in, even though you'll still have that, whatever, 10, 15 million that you wouldn't have if you had, like, a max guy. But it's still enough to the point where it kind of screws you on signing that guy from free agency, aka, it's Murray and a guy you're signing for 17 million a year, or it's, the actual guy who's worth so much that he has to get the max. So.
True, and I think when it comes to that situation, I think that if you're at a point where you possibly are on the cusp of a championship, you kind of trigger that move because it's something that your team's going to get better with it, and that's why I could see Dallas doing it. Because Dallas is just Kristaps obviously is never going to work out, and I don't know what that second guy would ever be. Not saying Murray would be that second guy, but once they figure out that second guy next to Luka, Murray's a perfect 3 guy there because he does need the ball, but if you're playing with Luka, you have to understand you're just not going to have the ball. But he can still shoot. He'd probably get better defensively because he would be more focused on that side. And I think it'd just be a better fit for him. But, that's the team I think he'd be perfect with. Because I think they're going to need someone like him in 2 years when they realize that they need another guy.
Yeah, they're going to realize, and they may realize now they need another guy, but I just don't know if Murray's good enough to be that other guy. He might not be good enough to be a 2, but he might not be good enough to be a 3, even if you have Luka as your number 1. I don't know.
I think he'd be good enough to be a 3. I don't love Jamal Murray, but I like him. I think he's very capable of being a number 3.
Maybe I'm just super low on Murray. I don't know. I wouldn't have him as a number 3 right now, but I don't know. It's really tough to tell.
He does get better in the playoffs.
It's maybe. It's tough.
I guess we'll see. Again, this year's kind of hard. Even if he does come back, he's never going to be fully healthy this year, anyways. But next year, I think will be a very big year. That's going to be a big year for them because then Porter's going to be 24. Jokic is still going to be a top player. Then Murray's going to be fully back. That's going to be a big year for Denver, and we'll see what happens at the end of that season. If they trade Murray or they keep it together or what they do with that.
Yeah, we'll see. But that's pretty much it for NBA news. So that's pretty much it for the podcast. Well, not in general, but for this episode, that's it for the podcast. Yeah. Any last words, or for this episode, that is?
Not really. Just like you kind of said earlier, baseball playoffs are happening in the next week. Basketball starts in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 2.5 weeks, whatever. And then obviously NFL is going to be all through that. So it's all the sports are picking back up, and then obviously hockey as well. But every sport's going to be happening in 2 weeks. So it'll be exciting.
Yeah. We'll be back in about a week. We'll be back Sunday night. Check out the Clips channel. We'll have something on there. We will be uploading at some point our reaction to Sports Illustrated article of the top 15 players in the NBA, as well as giving pretty much our top 15 players. So yeah, we'll be back Sunday night.